We start with Chapter 3, Demand and Supply Analysis, which is basically a review of your microeconomics, Econ 2010. We economists use a simple two-dimensional diagram to analyze a market. Say, for example, we want to analyze the Apple market. So, what are the two most important variables that we are interested in the Apple market? That is, what are the variables on the x-axis and the y-axis? Well, you have learned that before. The variable on the x-axis is quantity. Is that right? Not so fast. Okay, you have to specify the quantity of apple. That is, the variable on the x-axis is the quantity of that good, the good that you want to analyze. Then what is the variable on the y-axis? The answer is the price of apple. You have to specify the goods. This is very important. The variable on the y-axis is not just the price. It is the price of that good. Say, for example, if you want to analyze the labor market, what is the variable on the x-axis? The answer is the quantity of labor, that is, the labor hours. Then what is the variable on the y-axis? The price of labor. What is the price of labor? It is the wage. Say, for example, another example, you want to analyze the market of money. Then what is the variable on the x-axis? The answer is the quantity of money. Let's call it M. Quantity of money. Then what is the variable on the y-axis? The answer is the price of money. But what is the price of money? When you want to borrow money, what do you have to pay? The answer is interest rate. Therefore, the price of money is interest rate. Therefore, the variable on the y-axis is the interest rate in the money market. Before you draw the demand curve and the supply curve on the demand-supply diagram, you have to keep this in mind. You have to ask yourself these questions. That is, who are the demanders and who are the suppliers? Why are these questions important? Because any demand curve describes the behavior of the demanders. Therefore, if you want to draw a demand curve, you have to know who the demanders are, and therefore you can know what their behaviors are. Same thing. The supply curve, any supply curve, describes the behavior of the suppliers. Therefore, if you want to draw a supply curve, you have to assume that you are a supplier and what your behaviors will be in the market. Therefore, the demand curve will only change if the behavior of the demanders change. That is why you have to know who the demanders are. Because if you want to shift the demand curve, the demanders' behaviors have to be changed. Same thing applies to the supply curve. If you want to shift the supply curve, the supplier's behaviors must change. That is, only the changes in suppliers' behavior will shift the supply curve. Only the changes in the demander's behaviors will shift the demand curve. That is why you have to know these two questions before you can draw a demand curve and a supply curve. Alright, now let's draw the demand curve. Remember the distinction between quantity demanded and demand? Well, the textbook says, well, the quantity demanded is the amount that consumers plan to buy at a particular price. Alright, so be very careful. You want to draw a demand curve. Say, for example, you want to draw a demand curve of the apple market. Again, the variable on the x-axis is quantity of apple. The variable on the y-axis is the price of apple. Now you want to draw a demand curve. At a specific price, at a particular price, say for example, the price of apple is $1 each. Then at this specific price, you plan to buy, say for example, 5 apples. Then you get a dot. At price 1, you want to buy 5. Then this 5 is the quantity demanded when the price is 1. That is, quantity demanded is always linked to a particular price. So it's always a pair. It's $1, 5 apples. So this is the quantity demanded. And this is a dot on the demand curve. Then what is demand? The demand is not just a dot. The demand is the entire plan over various prices. That is, if the price is 50 cents each, your quantity demanded is, say for example, 10. Again, we got another dot, another pair of price quantity. This one is 50 cents and 10 apples. So again, this 10 is quantity demanded. But when you connect the dots, you draw a demand curve. And the whole demand curve is called the demand for apple. That is, quantity demanded is just a number, a dot on the demand curve. And the demand is the whole demand schedule. That is, when the price is 1, I'm going to buy 5 apples. When the price is 50 cents, I'm going to buy 10 apples. When the price is $2, I'm going to buy 3 apples, for example. My whole plan, this is my plan. I don't know whether the price is $2 or $1 or 50 cents. But my plan is, if price is 2, I'm going to buy 3. If price is 1, I'm going to buy 5. If price is 50 cents, I'm going to buy 10. So again, what's the difference between quantity demanded and demand? Quantity demanded is always paired with a specific price. That is, quantity demanded at a specific price is a dot on the demand curve. And the whole demand curve is my plan. My entire plan for the Apple market. And this is called demand. Again, why do you have to know who the demanders are before you draw a demand curve? Let's use this example again. You want to analyze the Apple market. Price of apple. Okay, who are the demanders in the apple market? The answer is the consumers. Alright? So when you are drawing a demand curve, you have to assume that you are the consumers. Alright, when the price of apple is, say for example, $2, you're a consumer, you want to buy apples. How many apples you are going to buy? The answer is, say for example, when the price is $2 each, it's too expensive, I only want to buy 3, so 3 is the quantity demanded for apple when the price is 2. Now, when the price of apple drops from $2 to $1, now you are the demanders. You are a consumer who wants to buy apples. If the price of apple drops, if apple becomes cheaper, are you going to buy more apples or fewer apples if you are a consumer? The answer is you're going to buy more because it's cheaper. Say you want to buy 5. So you have to assume that you are a demander, you are a consumer. And think about your behavior. Your behavior is when the apple is cheaper, you are going to buy more. That is why the demand curve for apple is downward sloping. The lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Okay. The next question is, this is probably a nightmare in your microeconomics. After we draw a demand curve, the next question is, what causes a movement along the demand curve and what causes a shift of the demand curve? Remember that? You have a lot of exam questions on this. But actually, these are pretty easy questions. Why? What causes a movement along the demand curve? The answer is there's only one thing that will cause a movement along the demand curve. The answer is the variable on the y-axis. The variable on the y-axis. Say for example, what will cause a movement along the apple demand curve? The answer is the variable on the y-axis, that is the price of apple. Only the price of that good, only one thing, just one. The price of that good, that is the variable on the y-axis, that can cause a movement along the demand curve. Why? Remember how we drew the demand curve? What do? We pick a price, $2. At the specific price, my quantity demanded for apple is 3. So we got 1 dot. What's next? We change the price of apple. We lower the price of apple to $1. And then get the second dot. With 2 dots, then we can draw a line. Then we have the demand curve. That's exactly how we draw the demand curve, right? Therefore, what can cause a movement along the demand curve? The answer is, if I change the price, I got another dot on the demand curve. Therefore, the change in the variable on the y-axis, the price of that good, will cause a movement along the demand curve. Because that is exactly how we draw the demand curve. Easy enough? The next question is, then what causes a shift? What causes the demand for Apple to shift? This way or this way? Well, I say it's easy, right? Because what causes a movement along the Apple demand curve? What causes a movement? Only one thing. That is a change in the variable on the y-axis. Then what causes a shift? The answer is anything else. Anything else that changes the behavior of the demanders. Again, you have to know who the demanders are. Okay? Who the demanders are. Say, for example, you are a consumer in the Apple market. And this is your demand curve. So anything else other than the change in the price of Apple. Say, for example, if Oprah says, 1 apple a day keeps doctor away. Not just Oprah says that. Okay, that's fine. Then, what happened? As a consumer, you are an apple buyer. You know that eating apple is good to your health. Then what are you going to do? Before Oprah says that, when the price is $2, you want to buy 3 apples. Now, if the price of apple doesn't change, but Oprah says apple is good, very good. As a consumer, are you going to buy more apples or fewer apples? Are you going to buy 5, say for example, or just buy 2? The answer is you're going to buy more. Right? So at any specific price, because Oprah says eating apple is good to your health, therefore, no matter what price the apple is, you are going to buy more apples, more than you previously planned to. Therefore, you get all those dots on the right-hand side of your original demand curve. Therefore, your demand curve shifts to the right. Again, if Oprah says 1 apple a day, you gain 5 pounds per day. Alright, you don't want to gain too much weight. Therefore, originally, when the price of apple is 2, you were going to buy 3 apples. But now, Oprah says, don't eat too much apple. So, at price of 2, now are you going to buy more apples or fewer apples? The answer is fewer apples. Therefore, you will get a dot on the left-hand side of your original demand curve. Therefore, your demand curve shifts to the left. So again, what causes a shift of the demand curve? The answer is, other than the change in the variable on the y-axis, anything else that changes the demander's behavior that will shift the demand curve. Does the demand curve shift to the right or shift to the left? Well, all you have to do is ask yourself, you are a consumer. At a specific price, after the event happening, are you going to buy more or buy less? If you want to buy more, you get dots on the right-hand side. If you want to buy less, you got dots on the left-hand side. If you want to buy more, demand curve shift to the right. If you want to buy less, demand curve shift to the left. These questions should be easy now, right? So what causes a movement along the supply curve? Again, only one thing. The variable, a change in the variable on the y-axis. That is the price of the good. A change in the variable on the y-axis. That is, a change in the price of the goods is the only thing that will cause a movement along the supply curve. What causes a shift of the supply curve? Two words. Anything else. Be more specific. Anything else that changes the supplier's behaviors. Because any supply curve describes the behaviors of the suppliers. If you want to shift, if you want to change the supply curve, you have to change the supplier's behavior. Say for example, in the apple market, quantity of apple, price of apple. Alright, let's draw a supply curve. Now, you want to draw a supply curve, so you have to assume that you are a supplier. Who are the suppliers in the apple market? The answer is the farmers. The farmers produce apples and supply apples to the market. Alright, now you want to draw the supply curve, so you assume that you are a farmer. If you are a farmer, when the price of apple is $1 each, you want to supply, say for example, 5 apples. Okay, so this is quantity supplied. That is, at price of $1 each, your quantity supplied is 5 apples. That is a dot. Now, if the price of apple increases to $2, if you are a farmer, the price of apple increases. Do you want to put more apples into the market or fewer apples into the market? Remember, you are the farmer. The answer is the price is good, therefore you want to put more apples into the market, say 10. So you got another dot. And you connect them, that is your supply curve. So your supply curve is upward sloping. Remember, you are a farmer. And again, it's clear that what causes a movement along the supply curve? The answer is the change of price of apple. Why? Because that's exactly how you drew the supply curve a minute ago. Then what causes a shift of the supply curve? Anything else. Anything else that changed the supplier's behavior. Okay, who are the suppliers? The farmers. So what will change the farmer's behavior in supplying apples? Say for example, if there is a drought. If there is a drought, what happens? If there is a drought, at any given price, say originally when the price is 1, you want to supply 5. But now there is a drought. You cannot produce that many apples. Therefore, even the price doesn't change, the quantity supply of apple that you can put in the market is fewer, say 3 apples. At any given price, say for example, if the price is $2, originally you want to supply 10. But because there's a drought, you don't have many apples. Therefore, if the price of apple is 2, you can only supply, say, 5. So you get dots on the left of the supply curve, therefore supply curve shift to the left. What if say for example, there's a new technology on the fertilizer, so we can produce more apples. The fertilizer will affect the farmer's behavior in planting apples. So originally, when the price of 1, you wanted to supply 5. But even the price doesn't change because you have better fertilizer. Therefore, you can supply more, say 8. So you got a dot on the right hand side of your supply curve. Therefore, supply curve shift to the left. Next, you may say, James, why do we have to go through these nightmares? That is, why do we have to distinguish movement and shift? Why do we have to do that? The answer is, okay, now we draw the demand curve, we draw the supply curve. The next step is to put the demand curve and supply curve together. This is the demand curve, and this is the supply curve. And we find the equilibrium, right? The equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity demanded. Alright, now, if something happened in the economy, that is, the price of apple increases, then what happened to the equilibrium? The answer is nothing. Why? Remember, when the variable on the y-axis changes, that only causes a movement along the curves. On the demand curve, it moves from here to here because price goes from here to here. On the supply curve, because price goes from here to here, therefore, the point goes from here to here. So when the price of apple increases, that only causes a temporary disequilibrium, deviation from the equilibrium. That is, quantity supplied will be bigger than the quantity demanded. The farmers want to supply more apples than the consumers wants to buy. Then what will happen? This is called a surplus, right? What will happen? What happens is the price of apple will have to drop because there are too many apples in the market that people do not want to buy. So the price of apple will drop. Therefore, you will go back to the original equilibrium. You will go back to the original equilibrium. If the price of apple decreases, again, that only causes a movement along the demand curve and the supply curve. You will have excess demand. That is, more people want to buy apples, more apples are demanded, but because price is too low, farmers do not want to supply that many apples. Then what will happen next? What will happen next is consumers are going to bid up the price of the apple. So price of apple will increase and go back to the original equilibrium. Therefore, if the only thing that happens in the economy is the change in the price of the apple, the equilibrium in the apple market doesn't change, because that will only cause a temporary disequilibrium, and eventually the economy will go back to the original equilibrium. But if the event in the economy is not the change in the variable on the y-axis, it is anything else. Anything else. Say, for example, a drought. Remember, if there is a drought, will that change the demander's behaviors or the supplier's behaviors? Will that change the consumer's behaviors or the farmer's behaviors? The answer is a drought. The weather condition is going to change the farmer's behavior, that is the supplier's behavior. So if the event is there is a drought this summer, then supply curve will shift to the left, because at the same price, suppliers can supply fewer apples. So this is the original equilibrium. But the event is drought. Therefore, we are going to have a new equilibrium. That's the difference between a movement and a shift. For a movement, equilibrium will not change. For a shift, equilibrium changes. That is why we have to distinguish movement and shift. The final step of the demand and supply analysis is you have to know how to find the new equilibrium. And you have to know what the changes in price and quantity are in the market. Alright, so let's play around the graph. The first one is demand increases. Say, for example, Oprah says, you should buy more apples, you should eat more apples. Therefore, demand for apples shifts to the right. This is the original equilibrium. After the demand curve shifts to the right, you got a new equilibrium. The original equilibrium price is 1.5. The new equilibrium price is 2.5. Therefore, because of this event, because demand increases, price goes up from 1.5 to 2.5. How about the quantity? Original equilibrium quantity is 10. The new equilibrium quantity is 15. When demand shifts to the right, then equilibrium goes from here to here. Quantity increases. Equilibrium quantity increases. The next example, demand goes down. Say, for example, Oprah says, eat more apple, you will be fat. Then what happened? Demand shifts to the left, right? Original equilibrium price is 1.5. New equilibrium price is 1. Therefore, equilibrium price goes down. Original equilibrium quantity is 10. New equilibrium quantity is 6. Therefore, equilibrium quantity goes down. The next example, supply goes up. Say, for example, new fertilizer for the farmers. This is the original equilibrium, demand supply. Now supply shift to the right. This is the new equilibrium. Therefore, equilibrium price goes down from 1.5 to 1. Equilibrium quantity goes up from 10 to 15. The next one, supply goes down. When the supply goes down, supply curve shifts to the left. Equilibrium price goes up from 1.5 to 2.5. Equilibrium quantity goes down from 10 to 5. Alright, let's do some exercise. The table gives the demand and supply schedules. So this is the demand curve. This is the supply curve. But at a specific price, this is quantity demanded. This is quantity supplied. Demand and supply schedule for boat ride. If the supply of boat ride increases by 20 rides a day, okay, first, before this happens, where is the equilibrium? Remember, how do you find the equilibrium? Demand and supply at the same price, at the same quantity, right? So where do you see the same quantity? The answer is right here, 70. Therefore, the equilibrium price is 8, and the equilibrium quantity is 70. Alright, so this is 70. This is $8. Now, supply of boat rides increases by 20 rides a day. So that's put a new column here. For any given price, because the supply increases by 20 for any price. This is supply. Supply is the whole thing. So the whole thing increases by 20. That is, at any given price, quantity supplied increases by 20. So it's 70. Price is 6. Now this quantity supply is 80. Price is 8. Now it's 90. 10, 100. 12, 110. Alright, so this is the new quantity supplied. So cross this out. Can you find the new equilibrium? Where is it? It is right here. When price is 6, quantity demanded is 80, quantity supplied is 80 as well. Therefore, the new equilibrium price is 6. That is, the price will go down from 8 to 6. On the graph, supply increases, equilibrium price goes down, equilibrium quantity goes up. So the boat ride, the price goes down, and the equilibrium boat ride will increase by how many rides? How many rides? Well, it goes from 70 rides to 80 rides, right? Because the original equilibrium is 70, the new equilibrium is 80. Therefore, the boat rides will increase by 10 rides per day. Now, there's something very important that I want you to know. Did you see that supply of boat increases by 20 rides? That is, supply curve shift to the right by 20. Let me make it bigger. A bigger graph. Supply shift to the right by 20. At any price, supply shift to the right by 20. But the equilibrium right only increases by 10. Why? Because when you have the demand curve, the quantity goes from here to here, not here to here. The new equilibrium is here, so it only increases by 10. It's easier to see this on graph. So let's do one more exercise. So this is the demand curve and supply curves. In the above figure, let Q0 equal to 1. So this is 1. Q1 is 2, 3, 4, 5. P1 is $1. P2 is $2. P3 is $3. This question, suppose that the demand curve is D2. So we have demand curve D2 here. To increase the equilibrium price by 1. Okay, first, what is the equilibrium price if demand curve is D2? The answer is $2. Now, if you want to increase the equilibrium price by $1, that is, you want to increase the equilibrium price from $2 to $3, $1, right? It increases by $1. So you want the new equilibrium price to be $3. Then the demand curve needs to shift to where? Where is the new equilibrium that will have a price of $3? It's clear. The new equilibrium should be at C, right? Now, how can you change the equilibrium from A to C? The answer is you have to shift the demand curve from D2 to D3. You have to shift the demand curve to here so that your new equilibrium price is 3. Therefore, you increase the equilibrium price by 1. This is 2. Okay? So you want to shift the demand curve from D2 to D3. Then how much should you shift? You should shift this much. You should shift this much. You should shift this much. And how much is this much? This is from 3 to 5, or from 2 to 4. Therefore, you have to shift the demand curve by 2. So you have to shift the demand curve to the right by 2. Let's do one more. Suppose that demand curve is D2 again. Increase the equilibrium quantity by 1. Alright, what was the original equilibrium quantity? The answer is 3, right? Now you want to increase the equilibrium quantity by 1. That is, increases by 1 to 4. So new equilibrium should be here. That is, again, C. New equilibrium should be C, so that the new equilibrium quantity will increase by 1. Then again, the demand curve needs to increase by how much? 2. Now read it carefully. To increase the equilibrium quantity by 1, demand needs to increase by 2. Do you see that? You shift demand curve by 2, but equilibrium quantity doesn't increases by 2, it increases by only 1. Alright, now let's look at this question. Suppose that the demand curve is D1. Demand curve is D1. Now it's this one. When the demand increases by 4, that is, demand curve shift to the right by 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's exactly equivalent to saying that demand curve shift from D1 to D2, D3, sorry, D3. From D1 to D3. Okay? Then the equilibrium quantity increases by, okay, where is the original equilibrium? It was here, right? Original equilibrium quantity was 2. The new equilibrium quantity, the new equilibrium is here. New equilibrium quantity is 4. Therefore, the equilibrium quantity increases by, from 2 to 4, is 2. That is for Chapter 3, a review of your microeconomics.